Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Van Ostrom, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Positioning Your Library Marketing for Success, sponsored by Springer and featuring Ann Peters from the University of Texas at San Antonio and Patrick Zinn from Texas A&M University. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free-to users, these 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the left-hand side, you will see a chat panel that you can use to submit questions or comments. We will spend some time responding to your questions during the program, so please feel free to submit these throughout. You will also see a separate box for technical questions. Please feel free to use this feature for any technical difficulties you may be experiencing so our production team can troubleshoot them. And finally, please note that today's program will be recorded, and all registrants will receive follow-up instructions on how to access the archived version. Our featured speakers today are Ann Peters and Patrick Zinn, and here to introduce them is Sarah Schulman, Account Development Specialist at Springer. Sarah?
Great, and we'll turn the floor over to Sarah now.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam, and again, thank you and welcome to everybody who's joining us today. We are excited and fortunate to have with us two speakers whose libraries have earned a prestigious John Cotton Dana Award in 2014. Ann Peters is the Director of Library Communications at the University of Texas at San Antonio. She has 22 years of experience doing strategic communications, branding, project management, website, content development, and social media for higher education institutions. And presenting with Ann is Patrick Zinn, who is the marketing manager for the university libraries at Texas A&M University. After graduating himself from Texas A&M, Patrick went on to build a 22-year career in New York City before returning to Texas. And Patrick has expertise in branding, internal communications, graphic design, special event marketing, and social media strategies. Today, Ann and Patrick are going to speak to us about key ingredients to planning successful marketing initiatives at your library. They will examine several case studies of marketing campaigns to demonstrate how accurate relative marketing can enhance your library initiatives. Afterwards, we'll look forward to addressing your questions in a moderated Q&A session. And without further ado, I'm going to turn everything over to Ann and Patrick.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it. Okay, we have the first slide up, and as most of you will notice, there is a cake on there, and with a delicious made-up cake box recipe. And this really is kind of the premise or the analogy that we're making for our presentation today. Everybody likes to ice the cake. It's the fun thing you do at the end. And unfortunately, too many people treat marketing the same way. It is the fun thing they like to do at the end. And Ann and I would like to put a premise out there today that for successful marketing, it's something you have to do at the beginning. You have to build in at the very beginning so you can get the whole cake. So that's kind of our fun way to start the presentation today. We really appreciate you taking the poll today. It gives us a better idea of who's out there listening to us. Ann and I know that we're very fortunate. We're both dedicated marketing professionals within each of our libraries, and understand that many of you out there are struggling with two jobs, meaning you might be a librarian most of the time and then helping out your institution with marketing. So hopefully the case studies we give today will give you some tools and tips that are scalable, that can be used whether you're a small institution or a big institution, or whether this is a predominant part of your job or just a side part. So again, thank you for participating in the polls. It helps us a lot. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ann, who's going to get us started with learning some keys to marketing success.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Hi, everybody. This is Ann Peters. I'm really, Patrick and I are both just really excited to present to you all today. This has been something we've worked on for the past couple of weeks, and it's a subject that's near and dear to our hearts. So we want to spend the bulk of our time today talking about case studies. We've both brought some case studies to share with you, and I think that'll probably be the most interesting part of the presentation. But we wanted to start by giving you some big picture thoughts, and we're going to kind of illustrate those with our case studies in a little bit. So 5 keys to library marketing success. We're going to run through these fairly quickly, but again, just to kind of set the stage here, Patrick and I have come up with these 5 keys for you to think about. Key number 1, making marketing part of the strategy. So thinking about marketing from the very beginning of any project or initiative and really allowing it to help shape the strategy. It makes all the difference. And it avoids what we like to call the can you make me a flyer syndrome, which we'll get into that a little bit later and actually even provide an example of that. But if nothing else, if you take nothing else away today, I hope you take that piece away. Many of you who have attended any kind of basic marketing class have probably seen some variety of this illustration that I have up on the screen now, your classic marketing iceberg, right? So the things that people see are the promotion. So the tip of the iceberg that's sticking out above the waterline there. And that's the fun stuff. That's your marketing collateral. That's your communication pieces. But just as important, more important than your promotion is the pieces underneath the waterline. So your product, your place, and your price. If those pieces aren't strong, if they're not right for your target audience, then the promotion, all the promotion in the world, isn't going to work. So you really have to have those foundational things in place. Some people kind of wonder a little bit about the price one in particular there. Since we all work for academic libraries, price might be a little less relevant, but I would argue that in our case, time is money, so to speak, and I think for our faculty and our students, anytime we're asking them to take some time with us, in a way, that's a price we're asking them to pay. So I think it's still relevant. Okay, key number 2, set clear goals from the beginning. So setting your metrics for success and making sure they're measurable, putting numbers behind them. I realize this is easier said than done, and it can be hard to slow yourself down to take the time to do this, but trust me, it pays off every time. Some things are easier to measure. You know, if you're trying to put on an event or you're launching a new service, it's somewhat, relatively easy to come up with metrics like attendance numbers or usage numbers. Other things are harder to measure, like if you're trying to change perceptions or behaviors of one of your audiences. But you can still measure those things too, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. Another piece of this key is determining your target audience from the beginning of any project and making it as specific as possible. The more specific you are about who you're trying to reach, the more successful you're going to be. Key number 3, support from the top is critical. So I was watching with interest as everybody was putting in their job titles, and from the poll at the very beginning. That was offered before the start time. Those of you who had the chance to complete it and type in your position, that was really helpful just to give Patrick and I a little sense of who's out there. I did note that there were some directors and some higher level managers in the audience today. So I just want to kind of put this out there that the leadership component to successful marketing is pretty critical. So you need to commit the time and the talent and the resources to marketing. You have to convey to the entire library staff that marketing communications is actually a library-wide responsibility, not just the responsibility of the folks who happen to have outreach or communications in their titles. You have to give marketing staff a seat at the table. So a seat at the table where those conversations are happening around strategy and the direction that you're taking your library, because marketing can help shape that. And finally, you have to give marketing staff the authority to do their jobs. So in other words, They need to be able to prioritize projects, and they need to be able to say no on occasion when someone throws something at them and it's not in alignment with the overall strategy for the year. So that's the kind of support that you leaders in the audience can give to your marketing folks. Okay, over to Patrick.
Thank you, Ann. And I should apologize to everyone. I just kind of jumped right in, didn't even say howdy or welcome everybody. And those that work with me won't be surprised that I just barged right in. But this is my moment to say howdy from Texas A&M. So anyway, I want to get back to the presentation. And key number 4 is understand your audience. The next 2 keys I'm going to present, which are 4 and 5, really kind of go hand in hand. And for understanding your audience, it's really important to do your research. You really have to know where your audience is, kind of how they like to get their information, and where that information is received. And again, we just want to really reiterate, because this is really one of the most important things we're going to talk about today, is avoiding the sign at the end syndrome. If you do your research and know where your audience is, you will be able to start communicating with them at any time that you're ready to start the communication process, which will bring us up to our key number 5, which is understand the tools, or understand your tools. You should, we recommend or would like to encourage you to keep a vast toolkit full of tools, whether that be social media or any other things that happen on your campus. I know some campuses are able to reach their audiences very well through their student newspaper. Some communities are able to communicate very well through their local newspaper. But know whatever your tools are and know which tools go with your audience. So I encourage you to explore and play with all your tools until you discover the best practices to reach your intended audience. For example, here at A&M, when I need to reach a certain segment here, one of the only ways that I can absolutely reach them is by a targeted email. For some reason, it works very well. I know that this group will respond to it, and I just discovered that through experimentation. And so now I have that as a tool, and I know when I need to reach this group, that's how to do it. The other reason you should understand your tools is because you shouldn't just ever really be using one tool. You will always have better success the more places your audience sees your message. So really feel free to try to use more than one tool at any time. And when you're able to use your multiple tools, it allows you to work smarter and not harder, because then when you develop a graphic or an image or an icon for one tool, and you translate it and bring it across all your tools, it allows you to work across multiple platforms. And really, that's simply what is an integrated marketing campaign. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to give you our first case study, which is given to us today from Eric Barthel. He's the Director of Communications at the University of Maryland Libraries. This was a John Contandano winner this last year, and Ann and I both thought that this was really something that was kind of interesting to present to research libraries. UBorrow is a service, an interlibrary loan service that is utilized by all the schools in the Big Ten. So when the University of Maryland joined the Big Ten, they suddenly had a new interlibrary loan service that they were working with. So they suddenly had this, they needed to market this in addition to their own interlibrary loan service, and how they approached this was fairly interesting. They looked at the current ILS users to get data, basically to see when these users were working, or not working, when these users were requesting information. So with this information, they were able to build a data-driven communications campaign to increase awareness of this new interlibrary loan service, which was a little bit more expedited than the one that they currently had. In addition, I'm sorry, I lost my place. In addition to helping the libraries with meeting their service needs of an interlibrary loan, this service also allowed them to promote the academic benefits of now belonging to the Big Ten. So that was a big plus for them. Some of the tools that they used, what they did is they created a target audience, which was the current users of their interlibrary loan service, and especially a group that they called their power users. These are users that regularly used ILL to get materials to do their research, and this was typically faculty and graduate students. They set a goal, which was to reach 50% of their power users to be using uBorrow at the end of spring of 2014, and to increase that usage to 67% by the end of fall. One of the key components to their campaign is what you're looking at here is materials that were developed for staff training. They brought their staff on board first before they even tried to do any outreach to any students or faculty, and this allowed them to have their own people be the front line and be educated and be a communications tool for them for when users came onto the library. The next thing they did was they developed their creative strategy, and which they utilized at the very beginning of their campaign and used throughout the entire time they were marketing uBorrow. And what they did is they created the uBorrow uBot, and it injected a little bit of personality into what is a pretty dry library service. A very important and often a very effective service for users, but often taken for granted and not part of the conversation. So using this creative mascot, they were able to generate different conversations. In addition, they, you saw the uBot being on their website, they also used the same mascot or their creative strategy to reach out to their faculty communications. As you can see in these examples of faculty communications, that's, in one case, it does have a little bit more information, has a chart which is a little bit more reaching to the audience, but it did still include the uBot so that it had the same resonance across the audiences. And again, and another tool that they chose to use was social media. They used the same creative on this social media, and they actually even created their own dedicated uBorrow Twitter account, and it reached 120 followers. And that's a great proof right there to show that you don't have to have millions or thousands or hundreds and hundreds of followers to be effective. They were able to reach out to a dedicated group and do very effective marketing with that number. One of their most popular campaigns was something they called #Where'sUBot. What they did is they sent a 14-inch cutout of the uBot to other campuses that was actually traveling in the boxes that held the uBorrow resources. And what they did is they ended up getting many terrific posts of uBot at other campuses, and actually even some of the posts were of uBot meeting the mascots at some of the campuses where they were reaching out to. So not only were they able to effectively use this to communicate to their own campus, but then they also were able to reach out to some other sister campuses. The quote that I've just put up is actually came straight from the John Cotton Dana entry. It says, an early and ongoing partnership between Interlibrary Loan Team and the communication team demonstrated to others in our library that awareness campaigns are more successful if considered as early as possible. Basically, the lesson from this is involve your communications team in the takeoff if you expect results at the landing. This was something that was very true for them because they involved their group at the very beginning, the marketing group at the beginning, and I believe they got great results. Which is going to take us to our next case study that I'm going to present to you, because it's one that happened here at Texas A&M University. And I'm going to talk to you about our open house, which is something that's been ongoing here for about 7 years. It basically is a case that it shows how we had an activity here in the library that started more by happenstance, and then we were able to actually to get administration buy-in. And after the librarians got administrative buy-in, they were able then to include marketing, and I think we were able to make the event even more successful. So every year, at the week right before school starts, the libraries for the last 7 years has had an open house. The first year this was started, it was a real grassroots kind of effort, and did not really, as I mentioned, have buy-in from the administration. Didn't have any marketing, didn't have any things. The outreach librarians simply dragged some tables outside of the main library, and they grabbed whatever giveaways they could and just got hold of passersby. Even just doing that with no planning or any marketing, they were able to get 400 students, which actually ended up being a great start. With that great start, they were able to then come back to the administration and point out that without any real effort or really strategic planning, that they had been able to go ahead and get 400 people. So the administration then said, well, this is a great way to reach a larger number of students, so let's figure out how we can keep this moving forward. And with a little bit of funding from the administration in the next 2 years, respectively, the number of students grew to 500 and 750. And every year our open house is about 2 hours long. But the event was, the librarians began to feel that the event had kind of reached the peak of what it was going to be able to do. And so finally they decided to invite marketing to the table to have conversations about how to increase the event and to see where it could go. Marketing, basically my group got together with them and knew that if we were really going to make this successful, that we were going to have to do our research and find out where where we could find students who would be likely to attend the open house and also would benefit from the messages that we wanted to deliver. We also sat down and determined what our goals were for open house. Administration, outreach, and marketing decided it was worth growing the event in size, even if it meant we had limited time with each student. Our main goal was to get as many people in the door, teach them about the library services through some simple games that we had. And one of our top goals was to try to ease library anxiety. We just wanted that if they got in the door one time, they'd be likely to come back the next time they needed help. So we kept our goals simple, and I have to be really perfectly honest. We weren't above bribing them with a free T-shirt, and this image can show you the T-shirt that we gave away this year with Happy. So looking to a place where we could find students, for our target audience, we decided that Texas A&M or Aggie Fish Camp would work. Aggie Fish Camp is an event that happens in the summer prior to the fall semester. Over 8,000 freshmen attend, and it's a student-run event, and it is where students go to make friends. They learn the school's traditions, the school's yells, and I can say this because I'm an Aggie, it's basically where they go to drink the Aggie Kool-Aid. We thought this would be a great group that would, like I said, benefit from the messages at open house, but would also be likely to attend. We had to reach out to Fish Camp to see if there was even a possibility, though. We knew that there were some informationals being delivered during Fish Camp, and with a little persuasion, they allowed us to come to be involved in the informationals. And so we knew that this was a huge opportunity and that we were going to have to make a big splash once we got there. So we start every year the presentation with a video, and you can find the video that we're currently using on YouTube if you search Texas A&M University Libraries and the word Happy. And yes, we used that song, but we also, as you saw on the other side, designed a companion Happy t-shirt to go along with the video on the open house theme. After we get the audience energized with the video, we answer questions about the libraries and at the end take the time to remind them about open house and remind them that they'll receive a free t-shirt. We attend many sessions of Fish Camp, and it takes the marketing team, the entire outreach team, and many other librarians that don't normally have this in their job titles to be able to reach all those students. But we're really glad we put the effort into it because we can happily say, boy, have they come. Every year has grown, and this last year we saw nearly 4,300 students in about 2.5 hours. The t-shirt is, like I said, a great incentive, a bribe to get them in. But I don't mind bribing them in this case or spending the money on this bribe because it has two functions for us. First, in a very small view, it is an icebreaker when they come in and come to our reference desk. It's something that the librarian and the student can bond over or have a little quick conversation to kind of get everybody at ease. But secondly, from a marketing standpoint, these t-shirts are worn often, and so it really serves as a huge marketing tool that transcends just our open house. And I've seen these t-shirts all over the state, and that makes my heart very happy. So I'm going to throw it back to Ann now, who will guide you through your next case study.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Just a quick plug for those of you who haven't seen the Texas A&M Library's Happy video. Definitely go Google it. It's fabulous, and it will make your day, I promise. All right, so we're going to move on to another case study from my library here at the University of Texas San Antonio. This is our Blue Crew campaign. It was won a John Cotton Dana Award in 2014. We had a very specific need that we were trying to address. Or a problem, I guess you could say. We had identified that the number of questions we were receiving at our desks, at our service points across all our libraries, had been steadily going down over the years. So students were just not coming to us and asking reference questions or even any type of question in the numbers that they had once upon a time. And we saw this as a real issue. We really consider our staff to be a critical resource for our students, as important as the materials we offer and the study spaces that we offer in our libraries. And the fact that students weren't talking to us was troubling. So we wanted to see if we could turn this around. We came up with a very specific goal, which was to increase the number of interactions at our service points between our staff and students by 40% in one calendar year. So we put a hard number on it. It was a little bit out of thin air, but we thought it was an ambitious goal, but we thought we could do it. And so we set that goal for ourselves, and I'll tell you how it turned out at the end. But one of the other things we did was get real serious about who exactly we were trying to target with this campaign. We decided that we wanted to focus primarily on our undergraduate student population. That was the group we felt could really most benefit from having the assistance of our library staff, our reference staff, and we wanted them to feel comfortable approaching them. So this initiative started out primarily as it came from the top. It came from our dean, and it was something that was really seen initially as a marketing campaign. But getting back to that iceberg graphic that I showed you earlier, one of the first things we realized as we started to think about this is, we really got to take a look at our product before we start to promote this. We need to make sure that the brand promises we're about to make regarding our staff and the service they can provide is truthful, and that we have really made sure that the quality of the customer service is top-notch before we start to promote it. So the first thing we did was actually some customer service training for all of our desk staff to make sure that those interactions were going to be top-notch. A piece of that, one of the outcomes of that work is we decided to actually brand our desk staff, that by making them visually identifiable and giving them a name, that would help our students to recognize them and that they would be more approachable. That's where Blue Crew came from. That was a name that actually came about pretty organically. It came out of a brainstorming meeting we had with our folks who staff our service desks. And I think because it came from the staff themselves, it stuck, and we had immediate buy-in because they liked the name, and that was one of the keys to the success for sure. So we started to call our desk staff the Blue Crew, and we also got them these snazzy blue shirts to wear. They all have the same shirts, different styles, but the same color and with the same UTSA Libraries logo, so they were easily identifiable at our desks or anywhere they happen to be in the library. So once we did some of this kind of foundational work, we did some of the work on the lower part of the iceberg, then we got to turn to the fun stuff, the promotion above the waterline, so to speak. This campaign lasted an entire calendar year, so over the course of that year we had what I call micro campaigns. We had 3 different kind of little campaigns of visuals that we put out. We wanted to bury them so that they didn't get stale, so that's why we kind of went with 3 little micro campaigns within the course of the year. The first set was just what we call our questions campaign. These visuals, by the way, were repurposed all over the place. So we went with that integrated marketing approach of, you come up with the creative and then you just, find every way you can integrate it. So these visuals were posters in our elevators, and they were on our digital monitors, and they were on the wallpaper in our computer, on our desktop computers in the libraries. They were on our website. They were on our social media. We plugged them in anywhere we could. So these questions, these were, meant to plant a seed. These are the kinds of questions that you can ask of our desk staff. By the way, we came up with this tagline, "Ask Us Anything," to go with the campaign, so that appears throughout. So we had probably 10 or 12 different, kind of serious questions, And then we had some fun ones mixed in there too, just to kind of keep things light. Like this one, we even had a couple that were revolved around different holidays that came about over time. Then we kind of moved into another micro campaign where we did some memes. This was 2013, so memes were all the rage at that point. They're a little passe now. These were really just meant to be attention grabbing. They were kind of silly, but they got a lot of attention and they got a lot of social media posts and reposts from our students. So again, we probably had a set of about 15 of these. I'm just showing you a couple just to kind of give you a little sample. And we had a lot of fun with that Ask Us Anything tagline, obviously. And then we had a little cartoon series with not so dissimilar from UBOT at the University of Maryland. We had a little mascot as well. Actually, a couple little mascots that we used, Blue Crew mascots. Series of cartoons that kind of tried to get the message across that this is not, there's no shame in coming to the Blue Crew for help. In fact, if you do, you're going to be better off for it and you'll be a better student. So, so that just kind of gives you a sampling of some of our creative. But, you know, as I mentioned, our target audience for this was undergraduate students. And so, you know, the work that we had done, some of the research we'd done and focus groups with our undergrads indicated that the best way for us to really reach these students was grassroots type stuff. So in-person events, giveaways, just really getting out there and having kind of one-on-one conversations. We did a lot of kind of holiday-related events. This picture is from a Valentine's Day activity that we did where we had students write questions on blue sticky notes and decorate our entryway with them. We had little giveaways for them. It was a great excuse to get them engaged and have good conversations with them as they were walking in and out of our library. This is an illustration of that key number 4 we started with at the beginning, knowing the audience. This was one approach that worked well with our audience. Another approach, we know that our students love buttons. I don't know if this is true on everybody's campuses, but here at UTSA, they love buttons. They've got them all over their backpacks. We've gotten a lot of mileage out of button-related activities. So one of the things we did is had a button design contest where we asked our students to create a Blue Crew button. And believe it or not, we got about 140 entries. I was actually kind of blown away at how many students participated in this one. And so again, I think it was, you know, part of the key to success was knowing how much students love these, and it really worked from an engagement perspective. Okay, and then finally, you know, I mentioned we kind of injected the Blue Crew into everything we could. We even injected it into our chat widget, which appears on every page on our website. And so using that broad spectrum of tools definitely worked to our advantage too. All right, so I told you I'd let you know how we did at the very end. So we did surpass our goal. We actually saw an increase of 48% reference questions at all of our desks across our libraries by the end of the year. So you know, we considered that a big success, and I think having all that foundational work before we even started promoting was a big piece of that. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick for the next case study.
Okay, this I'm going to let you know, this is our case study that we actually entered to win for our John Cotton Dana Award, and it's actually, we had invited George R.R. Martin, who has a relationship with our libraries, to come to A&M. We were very eager to put a spotlight on one of our special collections, which happens to be science fiction. And part of that collection is the fact that Mr. Martin we're a repository for all of his manuscripts, papers, and ephemera related to his professional life. He basically started coming to Texas A&M in the 1970s to attend AggieCon, which is the largest run student sci-fi convention in the world. And over time, the librarians that were attending eventually convinced him to use us as a repository. So we have had his material for a long time, for almost 20 years, but no one understood that or knew that. In addition, the collection, the sci-fi collection, had been growing, but we felt like we really needed to get the word out that it was something that we had to offer, an unusual thing that people didn't think of us from this little college or this big college in a little town in East Texas. And I know that you're going to think that it's easy to win a John Cotton Dana Award when you have someone like George R. R. Martin in your pocket, but I want to remind everybody that we did our work, we understood our audiences, we set our goals, we surpassed our goals, we did our work with an integrated marketing campaign, and I think one of the reasons we had a winning entry is we were able to do it for almost absolutely free. So let me give you a little more detail on what we did. This is an image of a website that we created, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So we basically reached out to Mr. Martin because we told him, we gave him what our quandary was, that we really wanted to reach out to the world about our science fiction collection, and we really rely on a lot of philanthropy for the success of that collection. More than money, we really rely on the fact that these fervid, avid collectors have made their own collections that they keep their entire lifetime, and they often nothing ever happens with that collection because they don't know if anyone's collecting it. Matter of fact, we have so much of our stuff is ephemera, meaning that it was photocopied or that kind of thing, and it takes a special place to be able to keep it so that it lives in prosperity. So we did reach out to Mr. Martin and ask him to come, and this was right after the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones. If you're not aware of who Mr. Martin is, I'll remind you that he's the author of a series of books, many books, but his latest series is called A Song of Ice and Fire, or Fire and Ice, and then which is the basis for Game of Thrones. We told him that we really wanted to highlight the collection, and he said he'd be happy to come, but it was going to take about a year before we were able to get on a schedule. But that was a really good thing for us because it gave us time to plan. It gave time for our sci-fi curators to put together a really awesome collection featuring his papers and manuscripts and other objects that we had. And then it gave us a marketing time to plan a series of events, and we felt very strongly about creating most of the events free of charge so that people could come. And only, in the beginning, we were talking about only doing a minimal amount charging to defray some of our costs. However, in the meantime, season 2 of Game of Thrones came out and began to become really popular. So we realized that we were beginning to have an inkling that we had a different opportunity on our hands. But even with that in our mind, we continued to plan. We came up with a name for the entire 2-day event that he was here, that we would, and created a logo for it. It's called Deeper Than Swords. We used that to brand everything we did. We created a look for everything. You can see the sort of blackness and the castle wall. And we used this across all of our marketing channels. And as mentioned, this is the front page of the website. In addition to the website, we began to finalize plans. We really tried to harness our creativity. We developed this invitation that you see in front of you now. It's basically a paper invitation. It has a separate page that lists every event that was available, and the entire thing was held together with a branded sword/letter opener. And we really thought this was going to be perhaps for our donors and top administrators across the campus. But as the plans began to grow, it turned into something else. What we began to really realize was, as Game of Thrones became big, Mr. Martin was being invited to sci-fi conventions, and people were actually paying money just to sit next to him or stand next to him and get his autograph. So we thought, well, this is in a way our own sci-fi convention or connection. We're going to have a lot of his super fans, so we decided to see if we could capitalize on this. And we decided to add in an event, which was a dinner that was available only to 80 people, so that there would be a sense of intimacy. And we really worked with our curators, who they themselves were science fiction fans, and asked them what we thought we could charge. And they came back to us and told that they thought we could charge $400 for that dinner. And we decided to put that price out there, but we were also beginning to sweat, because we knew then, from the marketing perspective, that we were really going to have to get the word out, because we weren't going to be able to sell $400 tickets in College Station, Texas. So we then decided to start firing on all cylinders, and we really decided that we were going to have to get help with some media. So we really worked really hard by repurposing our invitations that we used, and we sent them out with our press release, because we really felt strongly that if we could get some media mentions, that it would help us immensely. That's something that's very hard for us to do in our community, like I said, it's a small town, and the local paper does not want to be the paper of record for this large institution. It wants to be the paper of record for the small town that we're in. But after a lot of pushing and convincing, we were able to get, for the first time ever for the libraries, a front page story on the Sunday paper. And because that was on the front page of the paper, it was actually picked up by AP and ran across the country. Now, we'd already developed our website, and we realized pretty soon that Mr. Martin had a blog that was very popular. He wrote on it himself, or his assistant did, and he began to mention his upcoming visit, and we were able to, in these posts, be able to link back to both our website, and then also you can see the social media page, that Facebook page that we created. We took advantage of also being able to link to any other social media sites and websites or blogs that had a science fiction focus. We're really pleased that we were able to say that we were able to fill the auditorium on campus, and this is a picture of the auditorium from the stage. And then, so with all the events, which included a book signing, moderated conversation in the auditorium, and some other opportunities, and the dinner, we spent approximately $32,000. But with the increased dinner, we were able to raise over $33,000, making the event basically free to us. And in addition, we were able to surpass our goal of having more than 3,000 people attend all of our different events. We had people that came from as far away as Pennsylvania and California. And we really feel that this was due to the success of our integrated marketing. We picked our tools that we knew that would work, reaching out to the audience we wanted to reach, and made sure we delivered the same marketing themes to every single person. One very exciting thing about this, in addition to making this free, was with our publicity, we were able to make enough noise that we were able to get the attention of HBO. And so when they knew that we were having a large auditorium filled with students and other fans, they reached out to us and they offered to show the first episode of season 3 of Game of Thrones 1 week before it actually aired on HBO. And it scared the administrators on my campus to death because they could only imagine what was going to be seen in the episode. And this is a picture of the moderated conversation that occurred before the screening. But we were able to use this, his celebrity and also his increased celebrity to generate media stories, both in print and broadcast, which really heightened the awareness of our special collections. So in addition to really achieving all these other wonderful goals, we really saw an uptick in the philanthropy that we received towards our special collections library. We received several important donations. We saw people that had no idea that we were even in the science fiction business reach out to us and connect with us and donate their lifelong collection. The other part of philanthropy that it worked for us is that Mr. Martin, then not only did we become a repository for him, as we began to celebrate our 5 millionth volume here in our own libraries, Mr. Martin agreed to donate the ceremonial 5th million volume this past fall, and it happens to be my first edition of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, one of Mr. Martin's favorite authors. So that was very exciting for us to continue the relationship. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Ann, who's going to give you another case study from UTSA.
All right. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. I see that we've got about 15 minutes left, and we want to leave at least 10 for questions. I see a lot of them are coming in. So I'm going to just briefly share one more case study from UTSA Libraries. We developed and launched a mobile site. This is in 2012, so it's a couple years old at this point, 3 years old. But I wanted to share it because I think it illustrates some of our key principles that we started our presentation with pretty nicely. So I was a member of the team that developed our mobile site. So from the very beginning, communications was at the table in terms of the actual product development. I think what I was really able to bring to the table in that development phase was kind of being the voice at the table that kept reminding everybody, we need to think about our audience. What is it that they want? What kind of services do they want to be able to access from their phone? What kind of wording is going to resonate with them? Let's go out and do some testing. Let's talk to them. Let's show them some prototypes. And so as a result, we had a lot of user testing and feedback during the development process of our mobile site. So, I think in terms of having marketing be part of the strategy from the beginning, and also knowing the audience, we definitely hit those two in a big way with this project. We had a very clear goal as well. We were hoping to get at least 5,000 hits on average per month within 6 months of launching the site. We reached that by about month 2. And so now to this day, continually, we tend to average about 7,000 or 8,000 hits per month on our mobile site. But of course, we're always looking for ways to increase those numbers. When it did finally come time to debut the mobile site and launch it, we had a lot of fun with the creative components. We went with a pop art theme. We found some fabulous stock images that we were able to purchase and customize with our messaging. And just going to show you a few examples here. Lots of melodrama. We had a lot of fun coming up with different ways we might portray in an Andy Warhol way the services offered from our mobile site, like checking their library accounts and checking study room availability, fun stuff. So, one of similar to our Blue Crew campaign, this is targeted to undergraduates primarily, our mobile site. And so, again, we relied on a lot of grassroots efforts. We relied on a lot of events and social media as kind of the kernels of our campaign. We tried to to capitalize on some existing efforts. We were, for example, going to do something for Halloween in our libraries anyway. We typically do some kind of student engagement activity for Halloween. We decided to wrap in our mobile site launch this year into our Halloween effort. So we developed this little pop art Halloween activity, developed some fun masks that we gave away to students during the day on October 31st, a little bit of info on our mobile site, and put together a little photo booth with some props that we had printed up and for the students to pose with, all of which, of course, had to do with our mobile site. So again, I think this particular campaign was successful because marketing was part of the strategy from the beginning. We had that heavy emphasis on understanding our audience and doing user testing before we even launched the site, and that the tools that we used, the marketing that we used, were things that were attractive to our students. Okay, and lastly, before we get to questions and a little recap, we did want to share one case study that wasn't a successful example, because that's important too, right? Is learning some lessons for things that could have gone better. So this is really brief, but we have a little cadre of students here, about 6 students, our peer coaches that have basic reference training, and they are able to help their peers here in the libraries with basic library research. The librarian who's in charge of the peer coaches at the time, this is several years ago now, wanted to try having the peer coaches embedded in our tutoring area in the library. We have a big tutoring room in our main library that's not actually run by us, but run by another organization on campus that does academic support. And so essentially, she was interested in having the peer coaches hold office hours in the tutoring area. And the first I'd heard of it is when I got the phone call and I had the request, can you make us a sign to put next to the peer coach as they are having their tutoring hours in the tutoring area. And here's the sign. It was a perfectly serviceable sign. It did the job in terms of identifying why the students were there. I did have some questions and concerns in my mind as when this request came in, and it gets back to that iceberg. Was this the right service at the right place at the right time for our students? Is this how they wanted to, when they need library research assistance, is this the right place for them to think to go and get it? That kind of background work hadn't been done. It was just let's try this, let's put out a sign and see if it sticks. And sometimes there's a time and place for that, for just experimenting and saying, we're just going to try it, it's low risk, doesn't take a lot of time and energy on the part of our staff, we're just going to try it and see if it works. And I think that can be a reasonable approach. But my rule of thumb is, if it's an effort that's going to take a lot of resources, a lot of staff time, certainly a lot of budget resources in particular, then you want to do all that foundational work to make sure those those 5 key indicators that we started with are in place. Okay, so real quick before we get to questions, what can you do? Quick tips for getting on the right track. This is just a little recap. Advocate for a seat at the table. Convince the leaders at your library that of the benefits of thinking about marketing and involving the folks who do marketing and outreach early in any given project. And I think we saw that worked really effectively in the UBarrow case and also in the Texas A&M open house case. Take the time to gather your baseline data. So this is part of the setting goals from the beginning idea, right? So the creative development is the fun part, but don't rush into it. Take the time to really assess the need or the behavior you're trying to change and settle on some reasonable goals and get buy-in around those goals. Make sure you're managing expectations on the part of your library leadership and your partners in crime as to exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. Make your case with data and proven successes. So if you've already got support from the top, from your leadership, wonderful. But if not, if that's something where you have to kind of prove, make the case for marketing and some of these things we're talking about, data will be your best friend. So show how any past success that you've had, show how marketing and communications help to move the dial and compare your outcome data with your baseline data. So take the time to gather that data. It does help. Patrick?
Okay, and do your audience research. Just remember, it doesn't have to be exhaustive to be, it doesn't have to be extensive to be informative. There's a lot of research out there that says you can extrapolate audience attitudes with as little as 5 to 10 people. We do that sometimes when we're doing our website testing and that kind of thing. We can have a group of 5 and we get a pretty accurate understanding of attitudes. And then the next is what I touched on before, and the key is find out which tools your audience uses the most. And like we've said before, you can experiment, but just keep trying to work out there, whether it's social media. Not very often do I think it'll be a sign in this day and age with students, but in your library that might work. It doesn't work at mine. And also, I just want to remind you, don't forget that your own frontline staff can be a communication tool for your betterment. They are often the most persuasive advocates. And we saw that in the UBarrow and also in the Blue Crew case. And I think with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much to Anne and Patrick. I really enjoyed hearing from both of you, and I know that I have a bunch of notes. I've been inspired personally by hearing your presentations. We have some really good questions here and not a lot of time. So I'm going to try to get to all of them, but I don't know if we will. This first question is for both Patrick and Anne, and that is, if you feel comfortable sharing this information, how much? What was the budget for both of your award-winning campaigns? That's the Blue Crew campaign and the George R. Martin campaign. Anne?
Sure. Well, so, I saw a related question in there, too, about asking about what it costs to brand our Blue Crew folks, our Blue Crew staff. So they're kind of related. We actually considered the shirts that our staff wear. That's an ongoing cost. So every time a new staff member is hired, we buy them 2 shirts. We give everybody a new shirt once a year. So we didn't actually consider that a marketing cost. That was came out of a different budget. But those shirts, I think they average about $20 a piece, and we get them from Land's End. For the marketing proper for that campaign, all told over the course of the year, between all the collateral we produced and the buttons and the signage and all that good stuff, we spent about $8,000. So it wasn't enormously expensive. We do have a poster printer here on site, so we saved some money there. And a lot of it was based on social media, so of course that was free.
And for the George R. Martin, we actually had a fairly sizable budget for that. I originally started with a $10,000 budget. That did not come out of my marketing budget. But that's the one thing I want to point out here is that while some of these things look like they're very expensive, we hope that most of these things we shared with you are scalable. So I saw that some of the comments, you can find other ways to find collateral to get students come in, your publishers and so forth. Will help you. You can also reach out to, perhaps if you have a development officer, you can find someone that will help fund a specific program you're doing. for not a lot of money, it becomes a lot of money for you when you're trying to do your outreach to students.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And a follow-up question in that same vein is, what percentage of your total library budget is devoted to marketing?
Here at A&M, it's actually very, very small. We really do a lot of, I work on trying to get a lot of unpaid mentions in the paper. I know that I did 2 things that look like we have a lot of money, and but we really don't have if compared to our overall operating budget, it's actually very, very, very small. We just rely on our creativity.
For us, our marketing budget is around, for the whole year, is around $35,000. That doesn't include a few things. It doesn't include signage. That has a separate budget line, but it includes most of the kind of traditional marketing that we do. And our overall budget, oh gosh, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around $1.7 million here. So someone would have to do the math on that to do the percentage. But so it's a relatively small percentage, for sure, of the overall budget.
Great. And this question is also for both Anne and Patrick, and that is, with smaller schools, how do you recommend that librarians at smaller schools without staff that are specifically supporting marketing and communications, how do you recommend they find the time to plan events and campaigns like the ones you described?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think it gets back to that leadership piece that we talked about early on. So, you know, if you don't have support from the leadership at your library to spend time and talent and resources on marketing, then that's tough. You do have to carve out time. And where is that time going to come from when you already have a full plate of responsibilities as a librarian? You know, I don't have any magic answers there except for you know, support from your leadership to take a chunk of your time to devote to that is probably going to be pretty critical, and maybe making the case for it with your leadership if that's not already there.
And it just comes down, I think what Anne said is correct. It has to come from your leadership, and they have to help you prioritize what's important for your time. If they've given you this role to play, then they have to also give you the opportunity to do the work that you need to do. I know it eats into your time with your librarian duties, but it has to be just as important.
Definitely, yes. Let's see if we have room for one more question. This is for Anne. Somebody asked, how exactly did the embedded peer coaches fail? And have you found another place to embed that service?
Well, it failed in that no one came to see them. So I think we ran the pilot for, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks, and I think maybe they had it was under 5 students, you know, approach them that whole time, and it was, you know, the questions they asked were, you know, it was, where's the bathroom, and not, can you help me with my research? So it clearly just wasn't the right place, or perhaps the right timing. We have experimented and continue to experiment with other embedding models. We have actually a little service point that we just created just a couple of weeks ago that we're playing with on a different floor of our library. We're seeing if that maybe is a better match, and finding hours that might work, you know, better for that service. But I don't think we found the magic formula on that one yet.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to Anne and Patrick, and thank you to everybody for all of these great questions. I encourage you to reach out offline, especially if you were not able to hear your question addressed here. It looks like we are, in fact, having to wrap up our time together today. I really hope that you gained some insights to help better promote your library services and to engage with your end users. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And thanks to Anne and Patrick again. You guys did a great job, and we really appreciate your insights. As a reminder, we have recorded today's program, so please be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice that will include instructions on how to access that. And thanks again to all our participants for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this session and have a great rest of the day.